I'm Jeff Hunt. He's Bill Thorpe. It's Friday.
Conspiracy Theory Friday for you. This is weird.
The only conspiracy theory is that these protesters aren't being paid, Bill Thorpe. They're professional agitators. And it's all done in an effort to try to weaken Donald Trump's influence and power. That's it.
What do they do the rest of the week and the rest of the months? What do they do?
I think
if they're getting paid? What do they do?
Well, they clearly don't exercise.
Protests, but you don't have protests all the time. So what do? They're not on retainer. You wouldn't do that. Would be silly to have them just sit home and pay them to not do anything. So what are they doing?
That's the federal welfare system, Mr. Thorpe.
I know, but that's the federal welfare system. I would assume that George Soros
and state-based welfare system. I think they found a good deal.
We're not saying that these people are on the state or federal welfare system. They're paid protesters. No, they have a job. They're paid protesters. They have income.
What?
So George Soros.
Why can't you do both?
You said you're paid, but they're paid. They're actual professional paid protesters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the rest of the time they sit around eating junk food on our dime.
Yeah. And again, these are all suppositions that have nothing backing them up. But again, welcome to Conspiracy Theory Friday.
Bill, the only conspiracy theory is that these are just hardworking, innocent people. All right, now it's time for the news.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
Hey, good morning. TGIF. Partly cloudy outside. I think it's in the 40s. Having little issues with some electricity right now, but expecting a high of 40 today. It's probably mid-30s right now. News sponsored by Pastor Camp Heating and Air Conditioning at 303-777-1234 to learn more about special savings opportunities on Lennox equipment. Our top story, Broncos kick off the playoffs tomorrow afternoon at Mile High at 2:30 against the Bills. The Bills, of course, coming off a dramatic win over the Jags last week, and the Broncos were off with the bye and the number one seed, head coach Sean Payton.
The thing that I have to continue to, that changes as you get older, is you still have to be quick. Like, play just ran, boom, next play. And I said this, look, when I was younger, like, we'd run a reverse on the 8-yard line, and I'd think nothing of it. And as you get older, you think about all the ramifications and so I have to also remove that, you know. It was said as you get older, you know, maybe you don't drive in the rain at night. You begin to, I can't let that happen as a play caller.
All right. Keep that in mind tomorrow. The Broncos organization has reportedly acquired another parcel of land near the proposed stadium site in Burnham Yard. The Post reports that a nearly 3-acre property at 480 Osage was purchased by the team Monday for $13 million. The site was previously used by a steel fabrication company.
Honestly, I heard it not all through the night, but more like early this morning. I heard some footsteps because I'm on the second floor.
An eyewitness, courtesy of Fox 31 and Jim Hooley, an Adams County deputy, and one other person were shot this morning at the Caraway apartment complex at 74th and Broadway. The circumstances surrounding the shooting are not clear. The complex in unincorporated Adams County is across the street from Mapleton Public Schools Global Campus.
I'm right by the stairs on this left side, and I heard someone running down the stairs, and then I hear another dude coming down too, and it sounds loud and heavy. And I hear them bust out through that back door, and then this was the start of it. The dude was saying, hey, get down or you're going to get tased. Stop running, you're going to get tased. So that was the first incident I heard.
The shooting caused a large police presence and forced the closure of Broadway. The conditions of the deputy and the other person are not known at this time.
You know, we're looking at a top 3% wind speed that we're going to see here in northern Colorado.
XL cutting power in some parts of Larimer and Weld counties to reduce the risk of wildfires. They may shut off the electricity to 9,000 customers due to high winds that could topple electric lines. Some schools in the affected area have canceled classes today. The National Weather Service reminds everyone that this is a red flag warning day for the northern I-25 corridor today and this evening, predicting gusts of over 70 miles per hour. All right. Also tomorrow, the Niners at the Seahawks in the NFC, and the Patriots in the AFC play host to the Texans from Houston on Sunday, and the Rams will be at freezing Chicago, taking on the Red Hot Bears. 22 in Westminster, 23 in Aurora, 24 in Denver. You're waking up with Jeff and Billy on a Friday. TGIF. Have a great weekend. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
It's going to be mostly sunny to partly sunny and mild, getting a little bit breezy, though, by afternoon. Highs upper 50s and low 60s. Windy and colder tonight. A cold front comes in tonight. Gusty northwest winds. Lows mid-20s. It'll be colder tomorrow. Upper 30s and low 40s with cold and gusty north and northwest winds. Colder Friday night, teens and low 20s. Partly cloudy and cool Saturday. Will stay in the mid to upper 30s. Down to the 20s Saturday night, warming back to the 50s for Sunday. Cooler Monday. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
You know, this new Bruno Mars out there.
Yeah, you were saying that the other day.
And he's saying he's doing a tour that he's announced and going to be bringing friends out with him. First tour since 2017. New album, yeah, a little 70s, little 2010 funk rock. The opening single's fantastic. I Just Might. It's really, really neat. Interesting video where he's playing all parts of the band, which he kind of does inside the studio as well. But kind of, it's interesting. Bruno always kind of has I don't know anybody's a fan out there, but Bruno Mars always seems to reach back in time to other inspirations of music and then bring them forward. He has this really unique talent of taking musical inspiration, bringing it forward, and making it sound new. It's kind of cool. But yeah, I Just Might is his latest one out there. Good song. This is good too, though. But yeah.
All right, I'm looking up the results right now. Someone posted them for the Q4 governor's race, Republican primary.
Yeah.
Okay, this is total money on hand. This isn't just Q4. Mark Baisley, $40,000. Okay, and he's changing. He's jumping over to
Senate.
To Senate.
Yeah.
Yep. Scott Bottoms, $110,000. Okay. Barb Kirkmeyer, $381,000.
Oh, nice.
Victor Marks, $619,000. And then it just kind of drops down from there.
Jeez.
Money, those are money contributions. Now, some guys have some money. I think they're, like Jason Clark has cash on hand of $124,000. I wonder if he's self-financing at this point. But money contributions, monetary contributions gives you a sense of where the race is. So Scott Bottoms, $110,000. Barb Kirkmeyer, $381,000. Victor Marks, $619,000. In my mind, it's a two-horse race between Victor and Barb. But, they still got the caucuses coming up in the state convention, which the caucus process, the state convention will be in April. So a lot of time. Scott Bottoms could turn around. But Scott in a third place against other Republicans regarding monetary contributions. Barb Kirkmeyer at a little more than half of what Victor Marks is.
Yeah, and I think right now that what you're seeing is, just based on access to media and everything else, it does seem to be a two-horse race. But you've been involved in these campaigns, my friend, that part of it is you've got to hold your powder somewhat during the primary. You don't want to go out there and overspend in order to win the primary and put yourself then behind the eight ball, or having to spend that first couple of weeks or months inside the general trying to raise money again, because it takes away from the time that you can spend messaging and pressing the flesh with voters. So there's that balance that you have going forward. And this is one of the things that I find interesting is always the idea that we say money wins elections, but we have some recent history where the candidates with the largest bank account ended up losing. And so I'm going to keep coming back to that over and over and over again during this election cycle, that just because you have the larger bank account doesn't mean you are the presumptive winner. Those leaders have been beaten before and can be again. So the onus is on those challengers, the people that are running behind. So I don't know, but that's a lot of money Victor's
Greg
got.
Lopez, 58,000. So that would put him in fourth place if he was still a Republican. So that's how it shapes up. And when you go through the caucus process, brother, it is wild.
Yeah.
That can change on the day.
Yes, it can.
You can show up with all of the momentum, all of the commitments, and then the speeches start going, and people go, meh, in the room.
Yeah, that I'm not as impressed with you. Oh, yeah. Yeah,
right?
It can change everything.
Who was it? Doug Lamborn almost lost that day.
Yeah.
Because a woman showed up, gave a better speech than him, and I think he held on barely.
Yeah. Exactly.
It could change.
This really could.
Wow, interesting numbers. Clear, at least when it comes to donations, that Victor Marks is leading the field with Barb Kirkmeyer second, Scott Bottoms third. That seems about right, what I'm seeing on social media regarding support.
You know, in the next couple of weeks and months as this gets closer, as we get closer to the primary, you and I should carve out maybe an hour or so and focus on the unaffiliated voters and just get their impressions on Marks, Kirkmeyer, Bottoms, and just see if what they're seeing in the primary is persuasive for them. But, that's later on down the road. We got to, it's still early in this process. But as we get closer to the primary, it might be fun.
And if you're at zero at this point, Joe Altman is at 0, but I think he just announced after the last one. So we can see how that churns around. So there is a dark horse.
I'm curious.
Stalking in there.
I'm curious to see how the platform of let's kill them is going to work in the state. It's going to be great.
Well, speaking of violence,
speaking of that,
here's Governor Tim Walz in Minnesota.
My fellow Minnesotans, what's happening in Minnesota right now defies belief. News reports simply don't do justice to the level of chaos and disruption and trauma the federal government is raining down upon our communities. 2,000 to 3,000 armed agents of the federal government have been deployed to Minnesota. Armed, masked, undertrained ICE agents are going door to door, ordering people to point out where their neighbors of color live. They're pulling over people indiscriminately, including U.S. citizens, and demanding to see their papers. And at grocery stores, at bus stops, even at our schools, they're breaking windows, dragging pregnant women down the street, just plain grabbing Minnesotans and shoving them into unmarked vans, kidnapping innocent people with no warning and no due process. Let's be very, very clear. This long ago stopped being a matter of immigration enforcement. Instead, it's a campaign of organized brutality against the people of Minnesota by our own federal government.
Tim Walz is lying throughout that. I spent time diving into a lot of those claims he made with regards to schools, breaking windows, dragging pregnant ladies around. It's either hyperbolic or just an outright lie that they're going door to door asking you to point out the brown people. It's an effort to gin up opposition to Donald Trump. And is it time at this point to bring in the Insurrection Act? The Insurrection Act of 1807, Mr. Thorpe, according to Wikipedia, has been invoked many times throughout American history. In the late 19th and 20th centuries, invoked during labor conflicts. Later in the 20th century, it was used to enforce federally mandated desegregation, with Presidents Dwight Eisenhower and John F. Kennedy invoking the act in opposition to affected states' political leaders to enforce court-ordered desegregation. More recently, governors have requested and received support following looting in the aftermath of Hurricane Hugo in 1989 and during the 1992 Los Angeles riots. Look, with Tim Walz just outright lying and getting people all worked up, and now ICE agents not being protected by Minneapolis PD, yeah, of course. Why not implement the Insurrection Act? Your thoughts, sir?
Now, I like the fact that we're going to be talking about this one because Earlier in this show, we were talking about time travel. And let's do a little bit of time travel here because we can jump into the Wayback Machine or maybe even the TARDIS and jump back to the election cycle that you and I were going through on the air here. And I recall myself saying Donald Trump's itching to invoke the Insurrection Act. He's looking for an excuse or a reason. We were talking about what we would expect in a Donald Trump presidency. And I said, I am of the opinion that he is looking for an excuse or a reason to invoke the act in order to deploy troops inside the country. And here we are. Whether or not we say that it is justified or it isn't, I just want to call back to, well, I had a feeling that this is the direction that we would be going based on the administration. And
you base that on the administration.
Yes, and the completion of the sentence is, and the people that are being very violent right now are giving him the excuse in order to do it. So that's the issue. Is I think this is the leverage. So yeah, there's a horse apiece on both parts on this one, and I also do not discount the idea that there are some people that are on the left side of things that want him to invoke the Insurrection Act as well. That do want that sort of kinetic conflict. It worries me because how it would be deployed and the reasoning behind the how and when it would be deployed. Because during things like looting post a natural disaster and during the LA riots, that to me is an entirely different scenario than what we are seeing based on the ICE protests. I don't see them being analogous or even rising to the same level of lawlessness. And that's what worries me about it. But yeah, I think he's sort of itching to go after it. And I would not be surprised that he would do it. And if he did, what I'm brought back to is a quote from former professional wrestler and independent governor of Minnesota, Jesse the Body Ventura, and former Navy SEAL. And his statement is, do you want to know when you're living in a dictatorship? It's when the military are doing police work. And he said, full stop. And he talked about the idea of spending 17 months in a country where the dictator was deposed and immediately, in order to declare martial law, etc. The leadership was overthrown, and they immediately went to martial law, and there were military on the streets, every street corner, the day after, enforcing the law. He said, if you want to know if you're living in a dictatorship, it's when you're using the military to do police work. And that's what worries me, is I see the Insurrection Act not as going after something like looting or going after something that was happening inside of LA, but I see it as wanting the military to do police work.
But Billy, 37% of presidents have invoked the Insurrection Act.
Again,
is that a form of fascism?
Again, when we're doing it for Hurricane Katrina, or Hurricane Hugo, when we're doing it based on what was going on in LA.
But they did it on labor disputes at one point.
Yeah, but the labor disputes, the issue was that the individuals that were involved in the unions were incredibly violent as far as attacks. So yeah, there's part of it there. Certainly.
I think if you're an ICE agent in Minnesota right now with the amount of ice balls flying at you, you'd say that was violence as well.
The ice balls?
Yeah.
I don't think ice balls being thrown at you rises to the level of having the military become the police force. They're ice balls.
I think those can do just as much damage as the pepper ball that took out a guy's eyeball. So, in my mind, Donald Trump's being the adult in the room, finally bringing some respectability back to Minnesota. I mean, this is the same guy. This guy right there is just, Tim Walz is just fraudulent through and through. His entire being is fraudulent. He oversaw likely the worst fraud in American history as governor. And now he's fraudulently lying about what ICE is doing there. And if this was any other Republican, they would have gone, oh, golly, I sure hope they're not mean to me. But in this case, Donald Trump being the adult, stepping up, getting order put back into place. And I think he's right to do so. Join the conversation, 303-696-1971. Text us on the Dan Capitalist Law text line at 720-819-5115. Jason in Denver, always hilarious. How much would you need to get paid to get tear gas, tased, or beat up?
Oh, see, that's a good question. Also begs the question about if it is that kind of, as you outlined, somewhat of a part-time gig, is that necessarily financially lucrative enough that they're not getting paid all the time because they were, sucking off the government teat when they're not being paid protesters. The thing for me is just the idea of, what happens inside of the protests and, being tased, being beaten. Brings me back to something I saw on social media recently, and it was a guy saying that he has a new coworker in his office. And he went up to her and said, "Hey, I understand that you carry a taser with you for safety. Can I see it?" And she turned to him and said, "No." And he goes, "Why?" And she said, "I do not let men handle my taser because every single one of them takes it and then tases themselves to see if they could take it. So no, you can't see my taser." And the guy wrote on social media, "It's exactly what I was going to do." It's like, that's exactly what I was thinking at the time when I asked her. I was going to see it and then I was going to tase myself. And he goes like, "Yeah, she was right. She probably has that rule for a reason." So yeah.
Cap Hill Phil saying, if I was a paid protester, the implementation of the Insurrection Act would guarantee more paychecks. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
If you're a mercenary. 6767. Oh my goodness. 6464. There is exactly zero upside for Trump to want the Insurrection Act. Take off the tinfoil hat. Take a breath. I disagree. One, I don't think Trump cares what the left or the media says about him at all. He's in his second term. But two, he, I think, regrets what happened in 2020 around the George Floyd riots and the fact they didn't act stronger to quell those riots. And so that's why you're seeing 3,000 ICE agents. And anytime, whether it's Chicago, Portland, San Francisco, anytime they say, "Don't come here," he's just like, "I'm just going to come here harder." All right, 5631. The ice balls are actually frozen water bottles, and they act like bricks. 8422. Hey, Bill, what would more of these agitators have to do for you to think that it's finally time for the Insurrection Act? Ooh, that's a good question.
A lot of it has to do with complete and total civil unrest, something that would be closer to what we're seeing inside of even Iran, and even more as far as, just complete lawlessness. If we were having roving gangs, the idea of what was happening at night during Black Lives Matter protests by groups of people, that gets closer to what I'm seeing. But I don't see anything based on these protests that shows me that we're anywhere close to an insurrection. And what I would like to ask you, Texter, is let's say that we were still colonies and subjects of the crown. If we had Americans at that time, again, we're colonists, standing in the streets, protesting, even throwing things at the redcoats, is that an insurrection? Is that it? I mean, again, the revolution, famously, but not really, started with the Boston Tea Party, but it wasn't really a revolution until it was sort of an armed conflict and that sort of rebellion. That's what I would need.
And remember, they didn't hold the British troops responsible. Thank you, John Adams.
Yeah, but again, that's what I would need to see. That's the idea. Is I have a hard time seeing that large groups of people that throw things at you, some of them, yes, dangerous, and those people should be arrested, but that rises to the level of an insurrection. To me, it seems like you're applying the term insurrection as the reasoning to get to where you want, which is putting military on the streets in order to enforce our laws.
6268 texting in. None of these ICE issues would be happening if the Biden administration hadn't lied for 4 years and left open borders so 10 million undocumented people could come into this country and ruin it. Touche. Right? It's a numbers issue. All right. Robert, we'll get to you next. Phone lines are open, 303-696-1971. Text us on the Dan Capitalist Law text line at 720-819-5115. Let's talk Mountain High Appliance and the Mountain High Appliance Clearance Center in Denver. Their clearance center offers a huge selection of ranges, refrigerators, washers, dryers, and more. Save up to 60% on open box, scratch, and dent display models and overstocked appliances from Bosch, Thermador, KitchenAid, and many more. more. When you're looking for great deals on appliances, think Mountain High Appliance Clearance Center for the best prices and selection. Here's the phone number. You ready? 601 East 64th Avenue in Denver. 601 East 64th Avenue in Denver. And we'll continue the debate on Denver's top talk radio show. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Debate's hot today on what's happening in Minnesota. Is it time for Trump to be the dad in the room and bring about the Insurrection Act and settle everybody down? Or is that an act of fascism and the destruction of our country? 8422 texting in. I don't want to see an insurrection. I don't want to see the military run Minneapolis. But the lawlessness needs to stop. It's ridiculous. To me, right now, the way the people are acting there, it's as bad as it should get before President Trump makes the call. Right up on the line, according to 8422. I think that Tim Walz is acting out of desperation. His career's collapsed. He lost an election to Donald Trump. He hates the guy. The fraud ended his reelection campaign. He's a cornered animal at this point. And I don't think he cares about the people in Minnesota. If he did, the fraud never would have happened. I think he's at the very end of his career. I think it's all collapsing around him. And at this point, he's like, yeah, go. At this point, fight Trump. I hate what this guy's done to my career, and he's all motivated by that. I could be wrong. Give me a call, 303-696-1971. Text us on the Dan Capitalist Law text line, 720-819-5115. ILJ comparing it with Iran. You have the people in Iran protesting. They don't have to. The essentials of life, freedom, the big one. But it's so hard to see me what these young people are doing in Minnesota. These kids have been raised what it looks like they've had good food to eat and water and clothes provided to them their entire lives. And they're out there. Do you compare them? Suzanne, with Trump, violence is the issue. He's a monumental bully who bullies everyone. Interesting. All right, let's go to the phone lines. Robert in Littleton. Good morning, Robert. You're on with Jeff and Bill.
Morning.
Good morning, fellas. Billy, your comment, citing that pithy little quote from Jesse Ventura, is actually what prompted me to call in, because if you had police forces that were doing their jobs and the president just said, screw it, I don't like it, so I'm sending the military in, then I would agree with you and with Ventura that that would be basically a dictatorship. The problem is that's not what's happening. Every reasonable person can agree that ICE has both statutory and legislative authority to enforce immigration law. That's there's no debate about that. You don't have to like it, but that's a fact, and it's an indisputable fact. And I think most reasonable people can agree that local police and sheriff's departments should probably provide some additional manpower for security, so that you don't have the incidents where American citizens are being arrested by ICE because they were obstructing ICE operations or throwing things at ICE officers or anything else. That's why you have local PD out there, because the presence alone helps prevent that sort of thing from happening. But that's also not what's happening. You have either Governor Walz or Mayor Fry or whoever that is telling these local jurisdictions, no, you cannot support ICE operations. You can't provide security for ICE operations. You can't be out there to do crowd control or whatever. And so ICE officers are left out there on their own. And when local forces are either refusing or being directed not to do their jobs and support a fellow law enforcement agency, and the president says, well, that's unacceptable, and invokes the Insurrection Act to send in the military to do the job that the cops ought to be doing on the ground, that's not a dictatorship. That is the military doing the job that the cops ought to be doing on the ground and are either refusing to do or being ordered not to do.
I appreciate what you're saying, but we've seen videos involved with these ICE protests of people that are there that do have the police on their vest. In fact, the woman that Jeff was referring to in Minneapolis that was dragged out of the car, there's a guy in that video, I believe, that has police on the back of his vest. So there are people that are police there. There was the video that Jeff played just the other day, earlier this week, where the woman was yelling about, she was honking her horn. I don't know if you were with us for that, but this woman's just in the parking lot honking her horn, and saying, they're abducting these guys. She was incorrect about what was going on, but she was yelling at them about not being the police, and the dude in front of her had police on his vest, and he goes, I am the police. Don't you see this? Can't you read? Do you not understand this? And she was wrong. She's yelling at him going, you're not the police, and he is the police. So there are police that are involved in this. And the other thing I would say is that it seems that in those cases where they are not, the ICE agents tactically, based on what they got with them, seem to be prepared for those type of security incidents and situations. The other part is that it's whether or not the training and stuff based on getting kinetic in those situations. But I see where you're going with it, but I disagree that the absence of the police means we need to put the military there.
Okay, well, we can disagree. And you're never going to sway me over to your side on that. When you allow crowds of people to gather around federal agents, and to your point of him having police on the back of his vest, if you look at any of the HSI agents out there, it'll always say police on the placard on their vest, and then HSI below it.
Robert, stop right there. I respect that, but here, that's a delineation that the average citizen will never understand.
No.
They will see police, and they will think police.
And I understand that. Then we have a problem with people not recognizing the validity and the legitimacy of federal agents as police officers. Right? And they are. They're sworn law enforcement officers. They have law enforcement duties and authorities across the country, just like an ATF agent or a DEA agent or an FBI agent, or any of the other, federal law enforcement or local law enforcement agencies. So if you have people that are completely disregarding that authority and deciding, you know what, I can interfere with this, with this operation, or I can obstruct it, or I can drive my car in the middle of it, or I can throw stuff at these guys while they're doing their job, or I can try, and I've seen many videos of them actually physically trying to pull ICE officers off of a subject that they were arresting. That is a crime. That is a crime in all 50 states. Under local and state and federal statutes, that is a crime. So do the ICE agents have the authority to arrest those people? Yes, of course they do. Purely from a factual standpoint, of course they do. And then you have all of these people that are going to screech about, oh, well, they're an American citizen. I don't care. They just committed a crime in a federal law
Robert,
enforcement officer.
I want to get your response to this text message, though. This is from Jason in Denver. It's got to be hard to pay people enough to get hurt. But I guess if you have someone that feels like there's an injustice being done, they're willing to risk bodily harm. But how do you square the claim that these are paid protesters with the reality that you may get shot, you may get hurt by engaging in this? Do you think that these are just true believers?
You don't. Are there some paid protesters? Sure. There are some. I have no empirical evidence whatsoever to base this on, but my hypothesis is that they are probably a very small percentage, like under 10% of these protesters are paid. Now, paid agitators is a slightly different thing. People to whip up the crowd, that's a little different. But paid protesters, very small percentage. I think most of these people are whacked out goofballs that hate Trump so much that they are willing to go out there and protest. But they are also a product of a consequence-free society. And this is a subject from another show that you guys were talking about just the other day with schooling. We have an entire generation of people that have been brought up to believe that it's not your fault, that everything that happens to you is someone else's doing, that the consequences of your actions are either illegitimate or simply shouldn't be there. And so they go out and they do whatever they want to do because they've never been punched in the mouth for it, figuratively or literally.
That's the case with these? Are these true patriots? These are Bill. No. Are these people that are maintaining America's limited government, fighting oppression and fascism? What are your responses? And Robert, I appreciate the call, but
yeah, thanks.
Bill, I'll give you the final word on it.
I can see part of it because what I've seen as far as examples are individuals that are presumed guilty until they can prove themselves innocent. And I go back to Brett Kavanaugh when they were arguing about the stop and detain tactics from ICE. And he said, well, if you're an American citizen, he can't see any sort of inconvenience when you just show them you're an American citizen, you go on your way. That has not been the case for a number of actual American citizens. And again, the assumption that in order to function in our society, one in which we talk about freedom and liberty, is based on the fact that at any point in time you have to prove to law enforcement that you're a valid citizen. we've got experiences with much more dictatorial and communist labeled authoritarian regimes that go on that premise. And so if that's the idea of the freedom and the liberty, I disagree with that. That's kind of the issue that I have. I don't think necessarily the protesters are the freedom fighters per se, but I think there's a horse apiece on both sides. But some of the authoritarian tactics by ICE and talking about moving in the military to do police work because of what's going on in Minnesota, to me is crazy as well. Just as crazy.
Text messages, hot. I'll read those in just a second. Let's talk Black Eyed Pea of Colorado. While we all like to debate on this show, we can all agree that some of the best food in Colorado is at the Black Eyed Pea, locally owned and run by Steve and Michelle. I love this restaurant. My whole family does. It's our go-to place after church on Sundays. They got 9 locations. There's sure to be one near you. They recently opened one in Fort Collins. Visit them at 807 East Harmony Road. This is the restaurant you want to take the whole family to. My kids love it. My parents do. All 3 generations. Keep it in Colorado. These are people I proudly support. You should as well. Take everyone out to eat at the Black Eyed Pea. It's homestyle cooking worth going out for. They make everything from scratch. They got ranch-style pork chops, mushroom Swiss chicken, ribeye steak, St. Louis ribs, and the Mile High meatloaf. It's delicious. They've got daily specials, senior discounts. The Black Eyed Pea has what your family's hungry for. The Black Eyed Pea also does catering, so your dinner party, rehearsal dinner, wedding reception, or company event will be a success when you look to the Black Eyed Pea. Hear me on this. I love everything about this restaurant. Visit the Black Eyed Pea near you, blackeyedpeacolorado.com, blackeyedpeacolorado.com. All right, Cap Hill Phil texted in. I think there's a difference between this and the 2020 riots. During the 2020 riots, the riots were aimed absolutely everywhere, and law enforcement simply couldn't handle it. If we're looking at Minnesota right now, I think all the unrest would dissipate if ICE stepped down enforcement action. Like the Insurrection Act would only need to be called because of the people's reaction to the enforcement actions of the federal government. So if that's the case, does it make more sense to scale down enforcement, make it feel more like it did under every other president, or mobilize the military force to make life insanely difficult for a bunch of people? Interesting. Text message here. Paid protesters are there to instigate the bleeding heart liberals to the point of putting themselves in harm's way. I have friends who are getting worked up by the paid agitators. All right. Would love to hear from you. The conversation will continue. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710, KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Text messages hot this morning as we debate what's happening in Minnesota. Marvin the meat handler, Trump's growing the Republican government so much faster than he is shrinking the Democratic government. Oh, goodness. Let's see.
You got someone mad at me about Bruno Mars. What the hell's wrong with you? I just, the weird part is just the visceral response about Mars is awful. Okay. That's a long text about
7352. So, Jeff, it's okay for Trump to call for the Insurrection Act because he didn't look strong during the Floyd protests? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, the Floyd protests were terrible. Billions of dollars of damage. Americans were killed. They shot through the Colorado State Capitol. So, yes, I would have liked to see a stronger response. I think we learned our lessons on what happens if you just allow that. I mean, the chaos. I mean, Kyle Rittenhouse, the shootings in the streets. It was awful. So, yes, I think we learned a rough lesson.
Yeah, see, that's what I think worries me is that, as I said when we were going through the election cycle, that based on past experiences, Trump is itching to use the Insurrection Act. He had asked about it a couple of times. Remember, he also asked when he was trying to move people out in front of the church in Washington, D.C. that were protesting. There wasn't anything violent there. They were just in the way of a photo op. And part of it was...
They lit the church on fire.
Hang on. At the time he was moving them, there wasn't anything violent going on, but he was asking about being violent to the protesters. He wasn't going there during the fire or anything else. That's the issue. He was looking at violence in order to move them out. That's what I think it is, again, remember inside of this administration, just as Stephen Miller said, basically might makes right. If you got the biggest club, you get to hit whoever you want and everybody else gets to deal with it. That's what I'm worried about, is that worldview of if we have the power, we can just do it, is how and why they're going to invoke the Insurrection Act. Because we have the power, so we obviously should do it.
Feel free to join the conversation. We'd love to hear from you. 303-696-1971. Text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line at 720-819-5115. Bill, since you're a time traveler, give me what's Monday going to look like? Are we going to see violence over the weekend in Minneapolis? Is it going to get worse?
Yeah, I think there'll be some violence, but I don't know about worse. I sort of feel that if it was going to grow, it would grow quicker. I'm not certain. I'm not convinced that it's a slow burn yet, that all of a sudden then you get to a tipping point and it just explodes into something larger, only because of our past history. And it seems like things ramp up a lot quicker, that if it was going to be very violent and we were going to break things and start burning things, that it would have already happened. And only because distance from the event normally calms nerves. It's after the event in which things are most raw. And because we haven't seen that after what happened with Renee Good and others, there is still going to be some violence. There's still going to be some interactions, some protests. But no, I still don't think that it's going to get to the level that we're going to see based on Black Lives Matter. And I don't think it gets to the level of, invoking the Insurrection Act.
So you don't think Trump does it? You think this is just...
Oh, I see we don't get to the level. I'm not saying he won't do it. I'm just saying I don't think we get to the level. It's not going to rise to the level in which it's needed. I'm not saying that he won't do it. Because I think his idea of the level that's needed is very, very different. I mean, I feel that he would invoke the Insurrection Act because some late-night TV talk show said something mean about him.
You might be onto something there. I think we are going to see it continue to get worse. I think there's an emboldenment, this crowd lunacy that develops, and they feel like they can press and push against Trump, and he's going to respond, and they want the fight, and it's politically advantageous to them. They think in their mind, they think they're back in 2020, that if we show that Trump doesn't have control, then it's going to be beneficial to us. So, and now you got Friday night, Saturday, Sunday. I think you could see it get worse. So, I hope that's not the case. Well, we'll be back on Monday to debate whatever did happen over the weekend. So, We'll be right back here to see who was right and who was wrong. And you can call in and join the conversation. So if you missed any of today's show, go to 710knus.com to download the podcast. Till then, go Broncos. You've been listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
We are Denver's talk leader. Enjoy your weekend. This is 710 KNUS. We'll see you Monday.